Dear students, greetings to all. I am Dr. Balaji, MD Community Medicine, Professor and HOD, Department of Community Medicine, working in Tagore Medical College in Chennai. So today, I am going to talk about, or we are going to learn about general epidemiology, basic concepts in epidemiology, some basic historical foundations, and all those things. Okay. So the session's learning objectives are to describe the historical foundations of epidemiology and basic epidemiological concepts. To enlist and explain the components of epidemiology, to explain and apply the various measurements in epidemiology. So let us see one by one. So if you want to know about historical foundation, we are supposed to know about this man, Dr. John Snow, the famous first father of public health. We call him as father of public health. The first person who has drawn the spot map. So this is the diagram which is shown here is a spot map, the famous place where he found out the cholera was transmitted by waterborne disease even before Vibrio cholera was discovered from the Broad Street water source pump. So Dr. John Snow is a basically anesthesiologist who administered chloroform to Queen Victoria in childbirth, also investigated cholera. In 1854, he investigated an epidemic of cholera and concluded that cholera is transmitted through water even before Vibrio cholera was discovered. So, history of epidemiology says that common water pump in Broad Street as the main source of infection that was found by this man. So, how he performed it? He conducted shoe leather epidemiology. That means he went to house survey and found where cholera deaths obtained or consumed water. And clustering of deaths occurred where the source of water came from Broad Street pump, which was shown in the spot map drawn by this famous person. Snow's method represents the modern foundation of epidemiological study designs. Now we call it as ecological studies, case control studies, and cohort studies. But ecological studies, he has done he compared the cholera rates by neighborhood, and he has also performed case control studies by comparing water source in infected and uninfected persons. And he also compared the disease rates in exposed and unexposed persons, people who drew water from Broad Street from the so-called cohort studies. So what is epidemiology? Let us start with the definition of epidemiology, which is very basic definition, which is being asked to all community medicine undergraduate students, especially in Viva. So epidemiology, the word came from epidemic, which is very old word dating back to the 3rd century of Greek origin. So epidemos logos, it's nothing but study among people. So historical background also says that 1927, W.H. Frost became the first professor of epidemiology in US, and later on, Major Greenwood, he became the first professor of epidemiology and medical statistics in UK. Some more historical backgrounds, some scientists, Parkin, Frost, McMahon, all those scientists or epidemiologists, they were all trying to give some definitions of epidemiology. So in which Parkin tried to define epidemiology as the branch of medical science which treats of epidemics. Similarly, W.H. Frost, he tried to define epidemiology in terms of science of the mass phenomena of infectious diseases. And Greenwood defined the study of disease, any disease as a mass phenomenon. And McMahon, he defined the study of the distribution determinants of disease frequency in man. So let us see a multiple choice question. The study of the distribution and determinants of health-related states or events in specific population was defined by Parkin, W.H. Frost, McMahon, John M. Last. So immediately after seeing this definition, we'll all go to the answer McMahon. No, McMahon said that the study of distribution and determinants of disease frequency. But John M. Last went one more step further. He has given the comprehensive definition of epidemiology, which says that the study of distribution and determinants of health-related states or events in a specific population and application of this study to control the health problems. So now we have finished the historical foundations of epidemiology and some basic epidemiological concepts. Now we are going to move on to the second important objective, to enlist and explain the components of epidemiology. So what are the components of epidemiology? The components of epidemiology is there embedded in the definition of epidemiology itself. There are 3 components which says disease frequency, distribution of disease, and determinants of the disease. So disease frequency, what is disease frequency? So frequency implies nothing but measures and summarize information in the form of a rate, ratio, or proportion, right? So these rates are essential for comparing the disease frequency among different population in relation to a suspected causal factor, so that that comparison will give you some clues to the etiology. So with the if you are having some clues to the etiology, so that you can develop some strategies for prevention and control of health problems. So this is first component. So moving on to the this component has got three important tools of measurement. As I said, disease frequency is measured in terms of rate, ratio, and proportion. So, what is a rate? So, rate is nothing but it is a measure of occurrence of some particular event in a particular population in a particular point of time. So, it also been said that nothing but a statement of risk of developing a condition. So, see an example. With an example, death rate is nothing but number of deaths in 1 year by median population into 1,000. This has got at the numerator, that is number of deaths, denominator median population, and the multiplying factor is 1,000, and 1 year is a time specification. So a rate comprises of four important components: numerator, denominator, time specification, and the multiplier. Similarly, second important disease frequency is measured in terms of ratio. It measures the relation in size between two random quantities. Simply, ratio is a result of dividing one quantity by another quantity, expressed as 1 is to 3, 2 is to 4, x is to y. Say, for example, sex ratio. Total number of females in a population by total number of males in the same population. This gives a sex ratio. The third important disease frequency is proportion. It is a ratio but indicates the relation in the magnitude of a part compared to a whole denominator, right? So in such case, numerator is always included in the denominator, and it is usually expressed in percentage. As we all know, proportion is multiplying factor is 100, so it is expressed in percentage. Yeah, let us see an example with an MCQ. Just the recap, right? Which tool of measurement is defined as a statement of risk of developing a condition? Rate, ratio, proportion, and SMR. SMR is nothing but standardized mortality rate. So of which I have told you, when we have seen three important tools of measurement: rate, ratio, and proportion. Of these three, rate is nothing but statement of risk of developing a condition. So we will move on to one more MCQ. The disease rate is nothing but A, risk of susceptibility, usually expressed as percentage, time period in a calendar year, disease occurrence in a specific time period. Here we have to apply the components of disease rate. As I have told you, four important components of disease rate includes numerator, denominator, multiplying factor, and time specification. So including all these four, I think the choice D is the more closer answer for the question disease rate. So disease rate is nothing but disease occurrence in a specified time period. So what is distribution? So we are moving on to the second important component of epidemiology, that is distribution of disease. So distribution of disease implies study of pattern of disease in a population. Example, so for example, which age group or gender group is affected, belonging to which geographical area, or either an increase or decrease of disease over a time span. So an important outcome of this component of epidemiology, when you know the time, place, and person distribution of a particular disease, we can formulate our own etiological hypothesis. Third component is determinants of disease. So determinants means, as we all know, it is a causative factors. So information on both frequency and distribution, it throws a light on possible causative factors so that you can little bit sure about the determinants or the causative factors. So etiological hypothesis formulated with the help of disease frequency and distribution can be tested, and underlying causative factors can be identified and confirmed. So our third learning objective is to explain and apply the various measurements in epidemiology. So let us move on to the various measures of epidemiology. So measurements include morbidity, measures of mortality, measures of disability, and other healthcare facilities related measures, utilization indicators, utilization of measures, measures of demographic variables. So many measurements in epidemiology are there, of which we are going to discuss in general epidemiology. We are going to discuss measures of morbidity and measures of mortality. So what is morbidity? As we all know, morbidity is nothing but disease or illness. So it is expressed in terms of two important rates. One is incidence rate and the second one is prevalence rate. So what is incidence rate? Incidence rate is defined as number of new cases occurring in a defined population during a specific time period. So it is nothing but number of new cases. As I told you, incidence is a rate which includes all the four components with a multiplying factor as 1000, right? And we have an example for calculation of incidence. This is very simple example. If there had been a 500 new cases of an illness in a population, 30,000 in a year, so the incidence rate will be, so 500 is a new cases out of population at risk or given population is 30,000 into 1000, which gives you 16.7 per thousand per year. So note, the incidence rate must include the unit of time. As I've told you, incidence rate is very important, which includes all the four components: numerator, denominator, multiplying factor, and the time specification, which is very important. And also, we have to discuss certain two more special incidence rate. One is attack rate or case rate. Second one is secondary attack rate. What is an attack rate compared to an incidence rate? Attack rate is a similar to incidence rate, usually expressed as a percentage. There in incidence rate, the multiplying factor is 1000. Here it is multiplied by 100 and used only during epidemic. This is very important. When a population is exposed to a risk for a limited period of time, say for example, a population is exposed to a risk of an epidemic for a shorter period of time, for 1 month or 15 days. So in that particular time, we will be using, instead of incidence rate, we will be using attack rate or case rate. So it is nothing but number of new cases of a specific disease during a specific time interval by the total population at risk during the same interval, and the multiplying factor is 100. Yes, understanding the disease transmission before going on to the secondary attack rate, right? So now we are in special incidence rate. We have seen about attack rate or is also called as case rate. Now let us understand the disease transmission. As we all know, index case, primary case, and secondary case, right? So as undergraduate, you are supposed to know these three definitions very clearly. Index case is the first case which comes to the notification, or first case which comes to the identification is called as index case. What is a primary case? The primary case is the case that introduces or brings the infection into a population is called as a primary case. And secondary cases are nothing but the cases which got infected from the primary case is called as secondary case. So what are tertiary cases? Yes, infected from by the secondary case is called as tertiary case. Look at this dots. That empty dot is a susceptible population, and dot filled with yellow color is immune population, and dot filled with pink is subclinical. Dot filled with red is clinical case. Right. Look at that. First P. Look at this diagram. P is nothing but is a primary case. From the primary case, all these four people got the infection, but these red dots showing yes are secondary cases, showing signs and symptoms. Pink dot with yes is nothing but a subclinical case, not showing any signs and symptoms. And this yellow color filled dot is a immune person. And from this pink colored dot or even the red colored yes dot, patient will get the further patients will develop the disease. These people are called as tertiary cases, right? So I repeat once again, yes is nothing but a secondary case getting the infection from the primary case, right? So let us see the secondary attack rate. Having understood the concept of primary case, index case, and secondary case, what is secondary attack rate? It's nothing but number of exposed persons developing the disease within the range of incubation period. I have given an example of a GIF of a cheetah attacking its prey. See, that much importance is given to secondary attack. Secondary attack rate is a measure of communicability. Look at the cheetah is running as far as possible, as quickly as possible to get its prey. So any infectious agent will also be waiting to go to the susceptible population and get the make the people infected, right? So number of exposed persons developing the disease within the range of incubation period by total number of susceptible or exposed contacts into 100 is a formula given for secondary attack rate. So the denominator consists of all persons who are exposed to the case, or sometimes also will use susceptible population, right? So initially developed for the measure of spread of infection in the infectious disease. So it is a measure of communicability, how much the disease spreads, or can call it as a spreading capacity of a particular infection. So if the disease spreads continuously, it is an indirect measure of evaluating the effectiveness of control measures. Let us see an example with an MCQ. A village has a total of 100 underweight children. The coverage of measles vaccine is 60%. Following the occurrence of measles case in a child after a visit outside, 26 children developed measles. The secondary attack rate is, how will you calculate the secondary attack rate? What is the formula for secondary attack rate? I have told you, number of exposed persons developing the disease. What are the number of exposed persons developing a disease? That means number of secondary cases out of total number of susceptible population or exposed contacts, right? Let us see the 100 underpaid children are given in this problem with 60% vaccine coverage, which means 60 numbers are not susceptible. So remaining 40%, or that is 40 numbers are susceptible, of which one case is a primary case. 26 were the secondary cases out of remaining 39 susceptible cases, right? So one case developed the measles, which is the primary case, which should be excluded from the numerator and also from the denominator, because once the patient gets the infection, he is no more susceptible. So the denominator is 39. And how many children developed measles after a visit? Yes, 26 children. So those 26 are secondary cases. So 26 out of 39 into 100, which gives answer as 66.6. This is a secondary attack rate. This is how we are supposed to calculate the secondary attack rate. This is commonly as a 5-mark question or in problems in practical exam for undergraduates. Right. Moving on to next important measure of morbidity, that is prevalence. The term disease prevalence refers to all current cases, that is old and new cases, in a point of time or over a period of time. So at a point of time is called as a point prevalence, over a period of time is called as a period prevalence, right? So what is point prevalence? Look at the formula. Number of all current cases, old and new, of a specific disease existing at a given point in time. That is the very important keyword in this formula, right? When the questions are asked in 2 mark for undergraduates, you have to be very specific in writing the formula. At a given point in time, that is a keyword in point prevalence, and the denominator is estimated population at the same point in time into 100. So when the term prevalence rate alone is used, it is taken to mean as a point prevalence only. So what is period prevalence? Number of current cases, old and new cases of a specific disease during a given period of time interval by estimated mid-interval population at risk into 100. This is period prevalence. So what are the uses of prevalence and incidence, right? So prevalence, as we have discussed, it is nothing but existing cases, that is old and new cases. So it helps to estimate the magnitude of the health problem. And next important thing, if you know about the magnitude of the health problem, you can identify the potential high-risk population who are all vulnerable, who are all susceptible, that population that you can find out with the help of prevalence. And once you know about the burden of the disease or the magnitude of the disease, it is very useful for administrative and planning purposes. Yes, similarly, what are the uses of incidence? It is very important thing is to control the disease. Very important. If the control measures are proper, there won't be any new cases at all. So uses of incidence very important is to control the disease. Like in spite of your control measures, if you are getting new cases, then you can find out the research and etiology to the pathogenesis of a particular disease in spite of the control measures, why such disease is happening. So you can also find out the efficiency and preventive and your therapeutic measures. Sorry, efficiency of your preventive and therapeutic measures. Yeah, let us see the relationship between incidence and prevalence. The diagram clearly says that the water present in the container at any point of time is nothing but a prevalence, and the water which is coming from the tap is called as incidence, the so-called new cases, and the evaporated water, for example, they are called as recovered from the illness, and the water leaked from the container is matched with death or mortality, right? So how do you relate it with the formula? So it is nothing but prevalence is equal to incidence into mean duration, that we will be discussing in the next slide. Now let us see the relationship between incidence and prevalence with this diagram, right? So what is point prevalence as on January 1? What are these numbers as on January 1? What is point prevalence as on January 1, right? So January 1, this case has happened before January 1, but it was present throughout this, and case 2 was also there, and case 7 was also there. So 1, 2 and 7 is nothing but point prevalence as on January 1. And similarly, point prevalence as on December 31. Look at this December 31. So this case happened before January 1, but still it was present till December 31. So case 1, then case 3 which crosses the December 31 date, and case 5 which crosses the December 31 date, and case 8 which crosses the December 31 date. So point prevalence as on December 31 is nothing but case 1, case 3, case 5 and case 8. And similarly, incidence of disease during this particular year from January 1 to December 31. So what are the new cases happened within this particular year? Yes, case 3, case 4, case 5 and case 8. These are all the cases happened during the particular year. So which indicates incidence of disease in that particular year. So this is expressed in terms of formula P is equal to I into D, which is nothing but prevalence is equal to incidence into mean duration. So this can also be expressed like prevalence is directly proportional to duration. So what will happen if the duration of the disease increases, automatically the prevalence will also increase, which can be explained in the next slide. Look at this slide. Longer the duration of disease, that means the chronicity of the disease increases, greater will be the prevalence. Example, tuberculosis. This is because new cases also will crop up throughout the year. And also the old ones also will persist for months or years together. So longer the duration of the disease and greater will be the prevalence. Similarly, if the disease is acute or short duration of illness, either because of rapid recovery, that means the patients get recovered immediately or quickly, or dies because of the disease is very severe. So what will happen? There won't be much new cases will be seen. So the prevalence rate will be low compared to incidence rate. Example, influenza. But strictly speaking, these very short duration or acute diseases will not have any prevalence at all. It will have only incidence. So next important is measures of mortality. So there are 5 measures of mortality: crude death rate, specific death rate, case fatality rate, proportion mortality rate, and survival rate. We will see one by one. What is crude death rate? Crude itself means that the numerator and denominator are not specific. So number of deaths by number of total number of population, or it can be little bit refined as median population, and the multiplying factor is 1000. So crude death rate have a major disadvantage because the numerator and denominator are not specific, so they lack comparability for communities with population that differs by age, sex, or race, which can be explained with an example. Look at this table. What is the inference with the crude death rate of city A and city B? By just seeing the crude death rate, it shows that they are similar. Look at this next slide. When the individual age specific death rates are given for city A and city B, but still the total crude death rate is same. But when you look at the crude death rate for less than age specific death rate for less than 15 years for city A and less than 15 years for city B, when you compare it, so city A is doing worse compared to city B when you have a age specific death rate. That's why with only crude death rate, do not compare. So crude death rate lacks comparability because we don't have any distribution, age distribution, gender distribution. Specific death rates are not at all known. So please do not compare two populations with only crude death rates. And this can also be one more slide shows that with the denominator. Now look at this. Previously we were concluding that city A was doing worse than city B, but now with the denominator we can say that, so now city B is little more and city A is not working well, right? So now we can say that with the denominator, if you are not specific the numerator and the denominator, only with the crude death rate you cannot compare any population. That is the conclusion about crude death rate. So the major disadvantage of crude death rate is lack of uniformity, lack of accuracy, lack of comparability, lack of sensitivity. Yes, it lacks comparability. So next measure of mortality is specific death rate. When analysis is planned to throw light on etiology, that means that particular deaths, that particular disease death rate. So then we call it as a cause specific death rate or disease specific death rate or group specific death rate. An example for measures of mortality, especially for specific death rate, number of deaths due to tuberculosis in a particular year by median population in the 1000. Yes, case fatality rate. What is case fatality? Look at that line, what it is doing. The killing power. The deaths occurred due to a particular disease by total number of cases due to the same disease and multiplied by 100. So it represents the killing power of the disease, which is also called as virulence. So it is typically used only in acute infectious diseases. In an outbreak, for example, in an outbreak of cholera in a village of 2000 population, 20 cases have died and 20 cases have occurred and 5 died. What is the case fatality? So 5 out of 20 is nothing but 25%, right? So 5 died out of 20 cases. That is case fatality rate of cholera in that particular population. So what is proportional mortality? Proportion, as we have discussed about rate, ratio and proportion in tools of measurement. In proportion, numerator is always included in the denominator, right? Now let us see the proportional mortality rate. So total number of deaths from a specific disease in a year by total deaths from all causes in that particular year into 100 is calculated as proportional mortality rate. What is survival rate? Survival rate, most commonly it is used in cancer studies or any chronic diseases. It is a method of describing prognosis. So survival rate is measured in terms of total number of patients alive after 5 years by total number of patients diagnosed or treated into 100. Yeah, let us sort out this particular MCQs, especially the measurements of morbidity and mortality included in this particular MCQ. At the end of the year 1990, the population of PHC was 30,000 and 120 cases of pulmonary tuberculosis. At the end of the year 1991, the population was 30,600 and 30 new cases were detected and 2 cases died. Based on this data, all the following rates can be calculated except. Now let us see one by one what are the contents given in the formula. Population is given, that is 30,000, 30,600. 120 cases of pulmonary tuberculosis. 30 new cases. Yeah, new cases are given, that means you can calculate incidence. 2 died. Death is also given. Let us see what is possible. An incidence can be calculated because new cases are given. Prevalence can be calculated because both old and new cases, that is 120 cases are old cases, 30 new cases are there, so we can also calculate prevalence. Case fatality rate can be calculated because death is given, 2 died out of total number of cases, that is 120 plus 30, that is 2 divided by 150 can be the case fatality rate, and then proportional mortality rate cannot be calculated because deaths due to all causes was not given in the problem. This is how you are supposed to come to it. This is actually a post-graduation MCQ. So I'm just giving you for a recap of the entire measures of morbidity and mortality. Until unless all of you undergraduates, if you do not know the formula clearly, it's little tough for you to come to a conclusion of this particular answer. So proportional mortality rate cannot be calculated because deaths due to all causes is not given in the problem. The next problem says that median population 3 lakhs, total number of TB cases is 3,000, new TB cases detected in the year is 1,000, and TB cases died is 30. TB cases cured and discharged is 1,500. Total number of deaths due to all causes is given as 2,400. Now the question asked is, which of the following is not true? Which of the following is not true? Incidence can be calculated. Prevalence can be calculated. Case fatality rate cannot be calculated. Proportional mortality rate can be calculated, right? Shall we see the answers one by one? Incidence can be calculated. Is it right? Yes. New cases are there. Incidence can be calculated. Prevalence can be calculated. Yes. Both old and new cases are available. You can calculate prevalence also. Case fatality rate cannot be calculated. Is it? Case fatality. What is needed for case fatality rate? Total number of deaths due to a particular disease by total number of cases due to the same disease. Yes, here TB cases died is also given, and we can also find out total number of cases with adding both old and new cases. So case fatality actually can be calculated, but here the choice is that case fatality cannot be calculated. So the exception is C. Let us see proportional mortality can be calculated. Yes, it can be calculated because total number of deaths due to all causes is clearly given as 2,400, and so from that you can calculate TB specific proportional mortality. That means TB cases died is 30 out of total number of deaths due to all causes is 2,400 and multiplied by 100. So proportional mortality can be calculated. So answer is C. So case fatality rate can be calculated because deaths due to particular disease and number of disease was also given. So we are almost on the last slide of this general epidemiology session. Just for undergraduates, how much importance is given to this, weightage is given to this general epidemiology. Look at this questions, tentative questions which I have given. So definite epidemiology is the most common question as in 2 mark or also in Viva by any of the examiners. And tools of measurement, rate, ratio, proportion sometimes as in 5 mark question. And components of epidemiology as we have discussed, disease frequency, distribution and determinants as in 2 mark question. And definition of incidence, point prevalence, period prevalence, secondary attack rate, and all the remaining measures of morbidity, mortality. Combined, it can be asked as a final question, which I have seen in my experience in Tamil Nadu Engineering University and other universities also. And practical problems, as you guys are aware, in your university practical examination, these problems will be given like what we have discussed in MCQs. You will be given for problem epidemiology problem section for 4 marks or 2 marks or 5 marks according to different universities, and for calculation of true death rate, specific death rate, case fatality, proportion mortality. Right. So thank you so much for this opportunity, medicine guys. You continue this job. I'm very happy to share my experience through this online platform. Hope this session was very useful. If there are any flaws in between, kindly. So this is also my first experience in making an online video for undergraduate students. If there are any flaws, kindly note down and please give us the feedback. We'll try to improve. Thanks a lot, my dear students. Thank you.